Welcome everyone. Now we have Björn Borg with us, and I leave the floor to CEO Henrik Bunge.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. Thank you for having us, and great that you're joining us in this fantastic fall weather that we're enjoying right now in Sweden. I'm going to bring you back a couple of years, actually, to 22nd of June, 1972. So there was a journalist that asked a young Swedish tennis player what his ambitions were. The journalist's name has long since then been forgotten, but the Swedish guy that he asked has not. The 16-year-old guy had been on the Pro Tour for 3 years. He just won the Wimbledon junior title against Buster Mottram. And as Björn was reflecting on the question, he gazed out over all the Wimbledon tennis courts, looking at the spire of St. Mary's Church far away. And then he replied very quietly, almost like a whisper, to the journalist, saying, "I'm going to be the best guy in the world." That's what he said. For Björn, it was never really a question on whether he should reach the goal that he set out, but it was more a question on the price to pay, or how much he needed to put in to get to where he wanted to go. And we have a very similar approach to the company. So rather than thinking too much about whether your ambitions are too high, or whether they're too far away, or whether the curve is too steep, we rather spend time thinking about how do we get there? What do we need to do to get there? That's one thing that I think we learned from Björn Borg. But also, of course, the brand was originated from a tennis court. It was born out of one of the greatest athletes that mankind has ever seen. And we want to bring those components together. And we think that is more relevant than ever before. Knowing, of course, that when I started Björn Borg, the underwear company was known not for the tennis player, nor for sports or activity, but for colorful underwear. Very far away from that Wimbledon dream. So we decided to bring that back, make that relevant again. And that is indeed as challenging as becoming the best tennis player in the world, it turned out. Because, of course, now I've been 5 years into the company. And I had a few strong victories, but as many defeats. But I'm still standing. And I'm still here, more convinced than ever that we can do something extraordinary with this still very small Swedish brand. The starting point really is to take a slightly different approach to the brand. So rather than thinking about how much more black t-shirt we can sell, we're thinking that the world probably rather need a brand that inspires you, so that you too can accomplish your dream, whatever that is. And of course, in a Western society where we have never had as much stuff as we have right now, but at the same time we've never felt worse, we feel that there's a room, an open window in the market for our brand that is pushing and helping and inspiring people out there, that if it's only one thing that you do tomorrow, it's probably not shopping it more, but it's training. Because training will enable you to do so much more than just the training part. And that's been our approach ever since. And of course, my background comes from sports, so it was easy to take that route when I started Björn Borg. But also we saw that the room, the arena for a sports brand is so much bigger than for one that is only focusing on underwear. So that was an immediate, strong fit. We also saw in consumer research back in 2014 that the consumers wanted to buy more from Björn Borg. Not only underwear, but also other stuff, but they just couldn't find it. So that was the route that we embarked upon back then. And again, I'm super convinced that we will manage to be successful, even though it will take some time, of course. With a background from Adidas and Peak Performance and Radio Shack in the US, I also have understood that it's not the length of your business plans or the number of consultants that you have that will make the biggest difference. It's rather to create something very easy to understand, something very pragmatic, so everyone understands what we need to do, knowing that the battlefield is not in the boardroom, it's on the shop floor. So we decided to create a business plan that is 1 page, not 2 or 4 or 156 or 2,100 as Adidas, just one. And this is the one. We said that the first thing we need to figure out, of course, is with the same relentlessness as Björn Borg, have this clear idea. What is our becoming the best tennis player in the world? And that is to build the #1 sports fashion brand for people who wants to feel active and attractive. That's our Wimbledon. Of course, we need to measure that somehow. For Bjorn, it was winning Wimbledon, not only once, but a couple of times. For us, it's measuring through 4 different KPIs. One is realized average retail price, which is about how willing the consumers are to buy our products at full price. The second one is engagement, which means that we want to measure our internal engagement so everyone working for Bjorn Borg feels that this is the place I want to be and nowhere else. And then, of course, sales and then profit. Those are the 4 KPIs that is measuring our progress towards becoming the #1 sports fashion brand. We know, of course, that knowing where you want to go is fantastic, but you still need to be that 16-year-old standing there and have this dream to cover the grab. So, of course, when we look ourselves in the mirror, the brand is still too much known for colorful underwear. So we need to urgently speed up this transition towards something else. When we measure the same KPIs, we can say that the sell-through that we used in the past that will change to realize the average price is going okay. Engagement is super, super high. Total sales is 717 and EBIT is 71. So that's our starting point. And of course, the starting point change, depending on which day you look at it. It's constant moving. The goal, however, remains the same. And the gap in between, that's where you want to focus your resources. And we've said it comes down to 3 very simple things. We need to make sure that we win at the point of sale, that we create a winning team, and that we build one sports fashion brand. That's really it. But we also acknowledge that we need to create a strong brand, a brand that really connects with the consumers. And in order to do so, you need to have a very strong personality, we believe. And we've said that our how is really guiding us in everything that we do. And for us, it's about being passionate. It's about being empowering. It's about having that winning attitude. And of course, also being bold and magnetic. And we believe that not only did Bjorn Borg himself have all of those personalities, we also feel that there's a need in the market for a brand that's really sticking out. Bold in a sense that there's someone that's raising their voice when something is wrong. Like when we built the tennis court at the border between Mexico and US. Winning attitude is knowing that it's not going to be easy to do great things, but you need to continue to push. Magnetic is to create a brand that people want to be a part of, create a strong community that goes just beyond just selling t-shirts. We do that through a strong internal culture with compulsory sports hour, with compulsory fitness tests, really living as we preach. And of course, I know that not only my kids that are 6, 12, and 14 have the ability to focus on what matters the most. And unfortunately, that goes for you too. Because of course, probably 95% of you are thinking, what did the guy do with his eye? Which is of course completely irrelevant because I'm here talking about Bjorn Borg. But it only shows that I also train a lot. And I hit my face when I was training and now I have a blue eye. It was a week ago, so you can imagine how it looked a week ago. So this looks good, actually. But I'm sure in a week, the memories will be the only thing that is lasting, and the blue marks are all gone. The last thing is having a clear mission. So why are we here? What is the reason of this? And for us, it's rooted in this strong belief that we want to inspire people to be more. Through our belief that sports can make your minds, your souls, and your body become something extra. And it just happens that the last probably 2 or 3 years, there's a lot of people around us that fuel this. We have Micke Dahlén from Handelshögskolan or Hansen, who's talking about physical training as the key enabler to become better at also other stuff. And if you look at it, there's no other sports brand in the entire world that has taken this approach. They're all talking about competing, training to become the next world champion. That's not where the volume is. That's not where the potential is. The potential is to reach out to those that are not training at all. To make them understand that you shouldn't train to become better at training. You should train to become a better father, a better son, a better student, a better lawyer, to live longer, stay stronger, be smarter. That's where the potential is. So how's it going then? Well, if you ask me, too slow. But anyway, from 2014, we're continuing to grow every year. We are managing to uphold our profit, and also, of course, we're spending a fair amount into marketing. So we're on a good trend. So I think what this shows is that the idea of moving the brand from underwear to sports fashion is working. And that's, of course, we would want to have a steeper curve. But of course, also, if you're considering the last probably 3 years in terms of retail climate and consumer expenditures and exchange rate, then you can probably appreciate that this is probably a pretty good performance if you would benchmark that against any other. So we're super, super happy. Even, of course, we want the curve to be even steeper. But we're on a good run. All the numbers are slowly getting better versus last year. That also reflects Q3. So our latest quarter that we just released a couple of months ago shows that the sales is continuing to grow. We are being pressured on our profit, which is predominantly due to our currency. We are enjoying the hardship of a very weak Swedish kroner, which is tough, of course. When I started the journey, the US SEK was trading at 640. Today it's 954. So of course, from a brand that buys almost everything in US dollars and sell almost nothing in US dollars, that has a massive impact. But it's a bit like the rain, I can't do much about that, so I need to do what we need to do. And there's a number of things that we can do to mitigate that. In Q3 this year, we also have some impact of higher discounts, and that's within our control. And the reason for that is that we're closing down 2 warehouses because we were consolidated and only have 1 warehouse supporting all our markets. That's going to be very, very efficient. So we're closing down 1 warehouse in Holland and 1 in Sweden, and then we're moving everything to a new warehouse in Sweden. And in order to not move too much stuff, we're clearing out the old things so we can move as little as possible. And that's also one explanation to a quite poor margin in Q3. But nevertheless, though, 9% profit margin, and we're growing almost 10% top line. So I think overall a good quarter in a very challenging environment. Looking at the brand then, we can conclude that when we're asking consumers, the brand is a very, very strong shape. So we ask 50 consumers in each of our markets every week in and week out, to see what do they think, what do they believe in. And one of the things we're asking is, how do you see us as a sports brand? And the question is a list of brands, and then we ask them, okay, which of these brands would you pick? And here in Sweden, we're number 3. So the only ones that is ahead of us in Sweden is Adidas and Nike, which is absolutely extraordinary. So we're ahead of Reebok, Lululemon, Under Armour, all those brands. The challenge, though, is that if we take out Björn Borg from that list and then we ask them, hey, make a new list of sports brand, then almost no one will list us as a sports brand because the awareness still is too low, which means that no one is looking for Björn Borg stuff. But when they see it, they want to buy it. That's our biggest opportunity and our biggest challenge. Secondly, of course, is to maintain our strong position as market leader in underwear, and we're doing that. So the transition from 14 until now has not impacted our position as the #1 underwear provider in Nordic and in Holland. We're still #1 ahead of Calvin Klein, which is fantastic. We need to maintain that. And last, of course, that's the measurement around the emotional connection to the brand. So we ask them then, how much do you like it? How much do you like what they're doing? And here we're #4 on a long list of different brands. So the brand is in good shape, and we can see evidence that this transition is actually working. And also, if we look back at Q3 and also this year, our apparel business, so the sports stuff that in 2014 we didn't do, is now growing year on year between 30 and 40%. Looking at our own e-com site, where there's no sort of filter, there's no buyer from Stadium who says yes or no, we can immediately put that garment in front of the consumers. We're growing our sports apparel with 77%. So we know that there is just an open position in the market for consumers that wants to buy something else than the 2 major global leaders in Nike and Adidas. That's fantastic. So what's the plan then? So what do we need to do in order to grasp this opportunity? Well, it can be summed up to 3 things to make it very simple. So 1, it's about doing a brand transition. So moving away from underwear into sports fashion. Secondly is to drive apparel. That's going to be the key lever of making this transition. So if you go down to any SATS gym today, I'll promise you will definitely see a Björn Borg product. And most likely you will see a black t-shirt with a Borg print here, made of recycled polyester, one of our key styles, which actually shows that it's not that hard to make a product that will actually be spread across the market. So you can see that everywhere right now. We sold about 500,000 pieces since we launched it. We want to do more of those. And last, of course, we need to continue to attack sports distribution. So of course, we are very hard to find still. And of course, coming from sports distribution, we have the connections, but it's really the Stadium, the Anton Sport, the Paris, the Dhaka, all of those doors just need to grasp that we are the upcoming sports apparel brand. We also believe in city attack to limit our focus and to get our resources targeted to a smaller audience. So we're focusing on Stockholm, Helsinki, Copenhagen, Oslo, Berlin, Antwerp, Amsterdam, and London. That's really where we do all our focus when it comes to influencers, marketing, corporations, and collabs. I think that is super, super important just to narrow down our focus. And we have a good traction there as well. So an unproportionate share of our growth on e-com is coming from the big cities. We have a number of different categories, of course. And of course, you know all of them most likely. We believe that there's a massive opportunity in footwear, but also in women's underwear and of course in sports apparel. When we look at channels, we see that we have a super strong traction in e-tailers. So not only our own e-com site, but also Zalando and Sport Amour and Amazon. We grow fantastically there. The opportunity, of course, is to get a bigger stake at the physical retail doors. When we look at our countries, we want to focus and really dig where we stand, where we're strong, which is Nordic and Holland. We have a strong position. Everybody knows the brand. And here's about extending that strong position into apparel. We want to grow our business in Germany and in UK because we think that that's going to be massive opportunities. And then midterm, we're slowly sort of, shaping up a plan to do a US attack. And just last week, we signed a global ambassador that will help us doing that. And we'll tell you more about that later on. We also believe, of course, that this journey is about two things. So you need to have the right people, because those are the ones who will make the difference. And on top of that, you need to take care of the planet. Those are sort of sitting together, and we call it people and planet. So I'm super proud over our sustainability work. Just 2 weeks ago, we were awarded number 4 on the Stockholm Stock Exchange. I was in a meeting with McKinsey last week in London, and we are leading that in terms of having personal sustainability targets, in terms of changing the entire collection to sustainable products, in terms of dropping air flights. So we're really doing fantastic here. And I think the opportunity we're having is that we're so small, so then it's easy to do changes quickly. I think that's super, super important. But of course, also creating this internal culture where you too can accomplish your own Wimbledon dream. So we allow each and every individual to become the best version of themselves. And again, here we have a number of internal symbols like compulsory sports hour. Like if you don't join, you get fired. And of course, that's very provocative. And yes, 2 years ago, it resulted in 415 million viewers. When I said that in a Dagens Industri ad, Bloomberg's, Harvard Business Review, everyone just came to Stockholm and wanted to interview me. How can you say that? And then we said it again. Because we really believe that we want to make you better, but becoming better is not easy. It's hard having your best day every day. But enabling you to add strong habits instead of adding bad habits is the key enabler to become better. And it's not about being 16 or being 80. All of us here needs to train 3 times a week, 45 to 50 minutes. And then your life will be better. So if you're already doing that, fantastic. If you train more, well, you can probably train a bit less, actually. If you're not training at all, well, get that done then. That's going to be the biggest contributor to your life. We believe very strongly in that. Be Tomorrow is about launching our own logo that is really capturing the sustainability wave right now, and we're super happy of that as well. So just wrapping this up, 20 minutes flies by quickly, and the last minute I'll just spend on this slide here, in case it's not super clear already. So I made it clear for you just to help you out making the right investment. So I think we have a proven track record. Yes, we want to grow quicker, of course, but we've been growing steadily since we launched the new business plan in 2014. I think we have a convincing, easy to understand strategy. Sports is super, super big. There's always needs for new brands. It's not about competing and being number one. It's about inspiring people to train more. No one is really doing that. We have a stable and quite high dividend between 150 and 2 SEK. We also are keeping our ratios under control. We have a very strong and professional, committed management team that everyone is coming from the sporting goods industry. So we all have the phones to the stadium owners in our phone book. We can call all the owners. We know them personally. Of course, that will help us to get into the sports distribution. And of course, last, I think we now have a very strong platform to fuel further growth. I think one of the most impressive things that we did during this period was that in 1 year, we changed all of our systems. We had 17 when I started, into only 6. So we have 1 ERP system, 1 business system, 1 cash system. And we did that in a year, that was last year, where no one noticed it. There was no drop in EBIT, there was no lost numbers, there was no darkness, and that's never happened in the history of MAI before. I did it, SAP rolled it at Adidas, and we went completely black. So that was just done extremely well. So I have a super, super strong team, which indicates, of course, that stuff is done. Now we can focus all our efforts in winning consumers, inspiring people that, yes, you can too become better. And it's not that hard. You just need to train a bit more. And we want to lead that change that is going on across the entire Western Europe. So having said that, that's the 20 minutes on the minute. So thank you. Yes. Is this mine?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's only half.
Don't drink that.
I'm not a fussy guy.
Okay, thank you, Henrik, for a very opportunistic and inspiring presentation. And as you mentioned, Björn Borg was a really ambitious guy. And that leads me to wonder that previously you aimed at 1 billion SEK in revenues for this year with a 15% EBIT margin. You're now taking down that to 5% growth and a 10% EBIT margin. How do you see that? Because I think you have delivered on that the last couple of years. Couldn't you be a bit more ambitious here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think and I'm sure that probably everyone at one point probably joined a board meeting, and someone keeps telling me that when it comes to being a public CEO, if you want to survive yet another quarter, a good rule of thumb is to under-promise and over-deliver. Of course, that was not my approach until I became a public CEO. I always said, hey, aim high, reach high, and then you will reach further. And that's what I did when I started in 2014. And of course, I should have reached 1 billion this year. And many, of course, are looking at that as a failure. I think that we probably reached a lot further than if we didn't set the billion. But then, of course, when we reviewed the business, we conclude that probably we should be more modest going forward, because otherwise it might not be taken seriously. So I think the communication right now is that we want to grow mid to high single digit, and we want to have a double-digit profit margin. It's probably relevant and realistic, which is catering more probably for the needs of my board members than me personally. So if you would ask me, I'm a guy that aims for world records. So I want to do a business plan that people write a book about. That's what I want to do. But knowing that if I continue to tell people that, then they might think that I'm completely insane. So we think that let's have relevant expectations, because of course we need to have a little bit of luck as well to accomplish great things.
Yeah, because it sounds that you have done very much good things here. So would you say that the initial plan for 1 billion was a bit too optimistic rather than something went wrong?
No, well, I think the outcome, what you do, is a mix of so many different things. So of course, I remember when I started at Hästens in late 2002, the company did 170 million SEK and didn't do any profit. I met Jan Rüde, the owner, and he just gave me so much confidence and told me that you can do whatever you want. And 3 years later, we did 700 million turnover, and we made 70 million profit, and he bought a private jet and Ferraris and all kinds of stuff. And I did that in 3 years. So of course, I know that if you are a bit lucky, if you have momentum, if you have a strong product, then you can do extraordinary things. And looking at 2014 leading up until today, well, I guess there's a lot of things, at least outside our control, that perhaps didn't work in our favor. And of course, if you just would take out the currency impact, so let's just pretend for a while, I do that sometimes, just to tap me on the shoulder, that the dollar would be today the same when I started. Well, the 71 million EBIT that you saw last year, that would have been 125 million EBIT. Everything else the same. That's the amount of impact. And of course, then I would have walked around on water, and you would have said I'm the greatest CEO ever. So of course, the billion, I think, was realistic and relevant, and I think it did its thing. We really, grabbed the whole organization towards one goal. I don't think it was, too far-fetched. But I can conclude that we will close 2019 in a couple of weeks. And of course, you saw the Q3. So of course, without giving any forecast, it needs to be an extraordinary good Q4 to do 1 billion and create the 15%. So I'll get back on that when we close the year. But of course, I have to admit that it doesn't look super promising to nail the 1 billion and the 15%.
But last weekend we had the Black Friday and then also the Black Week.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? How you saw your brand stand up there?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit twofold. Of course, we can see that the increased share of volume that is coming out of discounted business is increasing. So that's one thing. So there's various campaigns all the time, and that's where really the volume takes place. I think what we want to do is take a slightly different approach. Of course, you need to be there because that's when the consumers are shopping. But we do believe, though, that there's other ways of capturing that shopping interest than only driving discounts. And that's, of course, what we need to sort of figure out. But we can clearly conclude that when it comes to off-price business, the billion could have been made already this year. However, of course, probably the margin would have been a bit lower because there's so many people that wants to tap into the brand, and it's still a premium brand, of course. So that easy route of reducing price, of course, is always there. I think what we want to do is building something long term, and I think remembering that the world don't need more products, but rather the world need a brand that really do something different. And I think, you know, Apple or Tesla, there's a lot of brands that I think is really inspirational in that sense, that they took a slightly different approach, and I think we can do the same here. There's just no other sports brand that has taken the route saying, we don't care about those that are winning Olympic gold medals. We just don't care. We care about those that have other dreams. That's where the volume is. No one is talking to those people. Like the Josefin, 19-year-old in Örnsköldsvik, that's the girl. And I think we can change her life. Of course, together with our ambassadors and our influencers and all our symbols. But that's what we want to do. And if we do that, then of course the volume will just go crazy, of course. But more importantly, I think we will make a difference for real, which of course sounds a bit idealistic. So I admit that, but that's just the way I am.
And lastly, have you been able to grow I think you mentioned the recurring average retail price. Has that been growing for you the last couple of years?
Absolutely. So we had sell-through initially, and we changed that for 2019 because we felt that realized average retail price is a better way of measuring. So it's really about seeing, you know, how much discount do you give away, and we're improving that. So if I look at our own retail stores, we're increasing that with 3% versus last year. So we can actually see an increase in our margin in e-com and retail despite the currency. So we are better at selling product at full price in 2019 versus 2018, which of course is not the trend if you then would look at Twilfit or MQ or, you know, a lot of other brands that is now really, really struggling, mostly retailers, of course. But so I think we see signs that there is possibility to really sell full price business. But then again, you need to focus on the inspirational part. So that's more than the product that you're buying, that you're getting when you're joining the Björn Borg family.
And by that, I would like to thank you, Henrik, for today's presentation.
Yes, thank you so much, guys.